Who gives a hoot? Well, we all should when it comes to owls. This intriguing bird is a bit mysterious and sometimes scary to those that aren't familiar with it. On this episode of the Paw Report, we're joined by Douglas-Hart Nature Center Education Director Jennifer Tariq to talk all things owls and why this intelligent creature is good to have around. So stay with us.
The Paw Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paw Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Paw Report. I'm your host, Kelly Goodwin, and on today's episode, we are joined by the Education Director at Douglas-Hart Nature Center, Jennifer Tariq, and she joins us today to talk all things owls. So thank you so much for joining us. And Jennifer, owls have long been known as cultural symbols. In fact, they date back centuries. There were cultural cave paintings of owls in France and in Egypt. But, you know, today with superstitions and legends, they kind of get a bad rap.
They kind of do, yes. So if you were to look at different cultures and historical records, some of the oldest caves have paintings of owls, and even the Egyptians you mentioned, there's a hieroglyph with an owl, and it actually is the letter M, and a lot of them looked at owls as wisdom and wise, the wise old owl. So kind of the old folklore that has carried on over the years. But somewhere along the way, some folks, you know, looked at the owl as very mysterious and one of those animals that only comes out at night usually. And so when humans are sleeping, it's their most vulnerable. So any kind of nocturnal animals people get a little weary about, you know. And so they started associating it with maybe dark magic and things like that. But more recently, we started to do more scientific study, right? Zoology came about, we started to learn about the animals a little bit more and started to understand them. But they are very powerful creatures. So they're magnificent predators, wonderful at hunting. And so even though they still come out at night, they're still, you know, something people are still a little bit more cautious of, definitely.
I think mysterious, just because you don't see them every day. It's almost like deer if you don't live in the country. You know, when you see them, you're wowed by them. And the same thing with owls. And do owls live in Illinois?
We do. So in the U.S., we have about 19 species, and owls are actually all over the world except for Antarctica. In Illinois, we have had 11 different species of owls, but some of those are kind of rare. For example, a burrowing owl has been sighted in Illinois, and he's not supposed to be anywhere around here. And that could be, you know, migratory through him off path or something like that. But there are owls from up north that will sometimes migrate into Illinois during the breeding season or winter season. We might see those. A perfect example is the snowy owl, an Arctic owl, and so during that winter season they might migrate to Illinois. So they've definitely been spotted in central Illinois. The short-eared owl has also been spotted, and the Souet owl. But normally, we only have about 4 owls that are here year-round. So we have the great horned owl, the barred owl, barn owl, and the little screech owl.
And we're going to talk about all of those
Absolutely.
on today's episode. If you had to put a number to it, how many different species do you think are in Illinois?
Usually you can find about 8. So.
About 8. But prevalent are the ones that you just mentioned.
Yes.
What are the most popular species of owls?
I think most people recognize the great horned owl, yes. And he's this guy sitting right over here over my shoulder. He's definitely the largest of owls, and he's very distinguishable because he has these tufts of feathers right up here. Some people think those are his ears. These are actually just feathers, little tufts up here. But I think he's the one that we see most often. It's not actually uncommon to see him during the day sometimes, even though they're supposed to be snoozing. But he might wake up for a little noon snack maybe, but he's definitely not afraid to be around people. So we definitely might see him, yeah.
So he doesn't actually have horns.
He does not have horns, I know.
But he's a hoot owl. You know, you might have people refer to the great horned as the hoot owl, and that's because of the way that they communicate, I guess.
Right. That's right.
Let's talk about the characteristics. I'd like to go through the 4 that you've brought here today. We'll start with the great horn. Some specifics about the owl: weight, diet, habitat, those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm going to grab this one right up here. So they're usually around 2 feet. Sometimes the females during different species of owls the females can be a little larger actually sometimes. But if you were to spread these wings out, you're going to add another 54 inches. So when they have those wings spread wide open, they can be quite intimidating. But they're actually, pretty light. They only weigh not even, about a 2 liter of soda. So they're extremely small little animals, but they just look beefy because of all these feathers. They have thousands of feathers, maybe 5,000 to 7,000 feathers all over their body, different types. So they have little downy feathers to keep them insulated, or they have their tail feathers or flight feathers, phyllo plume feathers. They all have a different purpose. He's distinguishable because of those nice yellow eyes for hunting at night. And he actually has a favorite place he'll roost. He loves evergreen or pine trees. And so a lot of times when we do owl hikes, that's where we look for them. They're kind of habitual in that sense. But they will take over maybe old hawk's nests. So they don't actually build their own nest, but they may take over an old abandoned nest. Or cavities, which are holes in trees. They might take over those as well. And that's kind of typical of all these animals, the barred owl and the screech owl as well. Love little cavities or holes in the trees.
What about their diet, Jennifer?
Yeah, they're not picky at all. They love small rodents or mammals, other birds. And the great horned owl, though, because he's one of the largest, is known to hunt one of the stinkiest animals we have around here. I bet you can guess.
Skunk.
I bet you can guess, yeah. So I kind of brought you a little present here.
Oh, excellent. I love presents.
Yes, the skunk. And why don't you go ahead and take a little sniff of that?
Oh,
yeah,
it still smells.
It does, but the great horned owl, as with many birds, they lack the olfactory to smell. And so because he's powerful and large enough, he can actually take down a skunk. And so he loves to feed on skunk as one of his meals. And so as people, we should thank the owl for keeping our skunk population to a minimum. But now they can taste their food, but he just can't smell it.
Can't smell it.
Yeah.
The one thing I noticed with the 2 great horned owls that you brought here today, their talons are massive and they look like they could hurt you.
Yes, they're
that's what they hunt with.
Yeah, extremely powerful. So kind of the hunting characteristics of owls, I think, is kind of fun. A lot of times you're going to see owls perched on a tree line, and they're usually facing an open field, and they're listening. They can hear mice for many yards away, hear them scratching around, and they're going to use that excellent sense of hearing. And the feathers actually along their face will send vibrations into their ears. And their ears are actually uneven. And so if you look at this picture here, you can see like they're behind the eyes, but the ears are actually a little uneven. And it allows the sound waves to funnel in. Think of a satellite dish, funneling it in. And then you see owls kind of bob and weave their head, and they can turn their head. And they're trying to figure out where that sound is coming from. And once they've figured out the sound, they're going to use these great big eyes, these eyes that allow as much light to come in as at nighttime. So they have extra rods behind their eyes to filter in light, and so they can kind of see as well. So a lot of times people think nocturnal animals can't see that well. Well, they really can, but they're going to use that sense of hearing first. And you can see from the skull how big his eyes are. They take up all of his face right here. And so once he hears them and sees them, that's when he's going to go in and use those strong talons, and he just grips that little mouse or vole up. And then they like to gobble that food whole, usually, if it's a small enough thing. Yes. So
I've actually seen an owl in the wild perched on a fence post, and man, their head spins. I mean, they're all over the place. Is that a common trait too, that they can turn their?
It is. So if you look at the eyes again, you notice this bone right here? This is a ring that actually locks their eyes into place. So owls can't move their eyes like we can. We can look left, right, and we can roll our eyes. Owls are always locked straight forward. So instead, they have the ability to turn their head, and so they can turn it about 270 degrees. Oftentimes when I'm hiking in the woods, you know, if I find an owl, he's staring right at me when I figured out he's known I was there long before I knew he was there. And before long, when he realized that I'm not in any danger, he'll turn back around, and I realize I was staring at his back, but his head was turned all the way around facing me.
Looking at you.
Looking at me, exactly. Yeah.
You know, I think one thing people want to know is, you know, they're majestic, but yet they're kind of scary. Are they harmful to people? I know that owls will do whatever it takes to protect their young. Does that mean tangling with a human?
So it's uncommon that they would ever attack a human, but it's more look at wildlife in general. If they have babies or they're nesting, right, they're going to protect their young, just like a human mama would protect their young. It's that same instinct. So if you come too close to their nesting site, or they sense you're a danger, they will certainly, you know, let you know that you're too close, and they may kind of swoop down at you. But there are other birds and other animals. Deer have been known to do that as well as small little birds. So most of the time, owls are going to keep their distance because we are much larger than them. Even though they're a more fearful predator, you know, we're definitely larger, and they want to stay away from us and are not going to harm us unless they feel threatened.
Another common species in Illinois is the barred owl, and you've brought along an example of the barred owl, and let's talk about some of their characteristics.
Yeah, I have the barred owl. So you can see he is still a decent sized bird here, but he lacks the tufts of the great horned, and he gets the name barred. If you look, like, he has the lines kind of going across his tail, so think bars or lines across him, so he's easily distinguishable here. And again, those yellow eyes and that distinguishable face here. So a little bit smaller. He's going to be more like 18 inches and shrink those wings down just a little bit. Yeah, but he has more of a famous call. You know, great horn, we said the hoot owl, because he just kind of hoot hoot. But Mr. Barred Owl, if you listen, it sounds like he's saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" And we'll see if we'll play it here. And yeah, let's see.
You might put it close to your mic. That way we can hear it.
Let's try that.
Interesting.
And that,
And that's usually heard at night.
Usually at night, yes. And it's more common to hear owls communicate during winter because that's when they're breeding. So those males are trying to project that call and attract those females, but they'll call also to kind of establish their territory as well. So
is the barred owl similar in the great horned as far as habitat and diet?
Yes, very similar. You know, likes the tree cavities, roosting on, you know, old nests, things like that, and the same diet. Usually mice and voles and things like that, small birds and other small mammals. Yeah, very similar diets, except he's not quite as big to take down that skunk. So
you also mentioned the barn, not barred, but barn owl and the screech owl.
Yeah. So barn owls are the next largest, and I only have a picture of him because they're actually endangered here in Illinois, but very distinguishable with that beautiful white heart-shaped face. And they're endangered because they loved roosting in those old wooden barns and farm fields. And so in current times, we're tearing them down. We're putting up, you know, new metal ones, aluminum ones. So they don't have as many roosting sites, but they too will love those tree cavities. And so that's why it's so important that if you do own, you know, woodlands, if you see a snag or a dead tree, we like to keep those up. Those are great for owls to kind of have around. And they're actually a little bit more particular eater. Now they will eat other things, but they love voles. That's their favorite animal to kind of hunt.
And they can eat a lot.
They can eat a lot. Most owls are going to eat about 6 little mice or voles per night. So think about the benefits of having them around in your backyard. Is if you do see one, I say, well, thank goodness they're going to keep my rodent population down, because you know they're eating about 6 a night. So.
What about the little screech?
The little screech, one of my favorites. He is just so little and so cute. And if you notice, he has those little tufts too, just like the great horned owl. But we went from kind of our largest that we have to our little smallest right here, little guy. But he can actually be more of a red color or a gray color. So there's 2 different colorations of the little screech owl. And you would think a screech owl would make a
screeching sound,
right? So yeah, he's just a little bit cuter here.
Sounds like a horse.
Yeah, like a
So like a whistle.
Yeah, a little whinny to it, like a horse. That's what a lot of people, that it sounds like. The screech, just to go back to that barn owl, is the one that makes a terrifying call.
Now that's more of a screech.
Yeah.
That would scare you if you walked into an old barn and heard that.
Exactly.
Might think something was happening in there.
Yeah, so that barn owl is the one that makes that horrifying screech, but he has that little cute little whinny or neigh. And so just a little petite eater. Now he can catch small mammals, but you're going to see him maybe catch like large moths and grasshoppers too. So a little bit change in the diet for him, but kind of that same hunting practice that they all have, and roosting sites as well.
Are they all the 4 species that you've talked about, are they all nocturnal, or are there some species in Illinois that aren't nocturnal?
They're most all nocturnal, but again, it's not uncommon to maybe see them during the daytime. They may be taking a nap, you know, and decide that they get hungry, or if you are walking in the woods and you disturb them, you might actually wake them up, and that's why we start to see them. But also, you know, we have such urban, you know, area. We have the farm fields, but you know, we have towns here and there, and so these owls have to find places to roost, and so that's why we're starting to see them in town. Believe it or not, that barn owl that's endangered, there's a family roosting right in the middle of, you know, Mattoon, so that just kind of goes along with the human population, and so all of our actions day to day will kind of disturb them and wake them up. So that's why we might see them during the daytime, but most of the time you're going to see them at night. Yeah,
I've seen them on, well, I mentioned the fence pole. It was out in a county area, but I've also seen them on street signs. You know, it's like they're just perching there, but when you drive by and see them, it kind of takes you back, because it's like you just never see them.
Right.
What is the biggest modern threat to owls? And I know that there's probably a lot of them, but if you know, what's the one thing that harms their population?
I think the key thing is, based on the research, it's power lines are the big one that take out birds. So you're looking at millions of losses per year with power lines, just because if they're flying, you know, it blends in a little more than a bigger object, and so sometimes they kind of wrap themselves in that. Which is why songbirds and birds of prey like owls are protected under the Migratory Treaty Act. So it is illegal to hunt them or keep them as pets or trap them along with the songbirds, just because we're trying to protect their numbers. And they are very beneficial to have, you know, around in the community. But, you know, as humans, we can definitely, you know, help them in that we can, we deter people from putting poison out to kill mice or rats that might be around. Is that rat will go somewhere and the owl may scoop them up for dinner and ingest the poison poison as well, making him sick as well. So we definitely want to deter that. And some things happen naturally, but habitat loss is another one. So places, forest preserves and parks and things like that. Our nature center, we're all about keeping habitat and promoting wildlife in the area. But unfortunately, with so many modern, things like vehicles, the cars, I mentioned the owl's eyes are locked into place, right? A little screech owl. Oh, he's just going to want to fall over. Those eyes are locked into place. So this owl perched over here, if he sees that mouse over there, he hears it, he sees it, and he goes in to scoop him up with those talons. He doesn't have peripheral vision, so he can't, if he's crossing a road, he doesn't see cars coming. So he may already be in mid-flight and able to see what's coming. So unfortunately, there's also some accidents with, vehicle collisions and things like that. So some things, can be avoided, but there's certain things that we can do to help.
Pesticides too, that can be poison.
Yeah, pesticides, we've definitely seen that in research with the bald eagles, for example, is it weakens their eggshells, and so it actually affects the offspring, and so we can see some of that with owls as well.
When we had our discussion prior to our interview, you said that somebody had called the Nature Center asking about owls, and that kind of made you think, hey, this would be a good episode for the Paw Report. Why are owls, and you mentioned it just briefly in this interview, why are owls important to keep around, and maybe what do you tell people that call the Nature Center that say, hey, I'm a little concerned about these creatures?
So a lot of folks, they may be putting up bird feeders and things like that, attracting songbirds to their backyard. Well, some of our birds of prey or raptors see that kind of as a buffet and an easy target. So I can see why homeowners might be upset with them, but it's also that whole, full circle that Mother Nature, they need to eat as well. And again, while they may take off a songbird here and there, they're primarily taking care of those mice and voles that you have running around, which also are going to eat your bird seed. So to have the owls take care of that is, in the long run, it just keeps that full circle and keeping everything in check. They're a great asset to the ecosystem to take care of those smaller mammals, those big predators. People may not think of them as a top food chain predator, but they really are. So they're keeping all those smaller mammals in check in the food chain. So, and
in the wintertime, you get a concert at night, when they're hooting at each other.
Absolutely.
Owls are a big part of the outreach program at Douglas-Hart. How do you incorporate this with our local school children and any other groups that come through the center?
So learning about the food chain, like I just mentioned, is a huge part of local curriculum. And we do get the owl program requested a lot in the fall. Again, probably because we associate owls with kind of the Halloween and fall as decorative items. But we also get to become scientists with those owls, in that we teach them their hunting strategies and their senses and adaptations, but then we get to figure out what the owl ate for lunch, because what I didn't quite finish is I mentioned they eat things whole, right?
They do.
Yeah, well, they can't always digest everything.
What goes in must come out.
Yeah, unfortunately. So we can sometimes find owl pellets.
Oh.
So this is, the fur and bones that the owl couldn't quite digest. They have two stomachs, that granular stomach and then like the gizzard. And the fur and bones just, can't go any further. And so after a meal, that owl will puke up an owl pellet, kind of like a hairball with a cat. And so with kids, they get to be scientists. And they each get their own little owl pellet and little tools, and they actually dissect the owl pellet. And so they start finding clues about what their owl ate for lunch. Now you may be thinking, well, you have puke in your hand. Is this safe? Is this clean?
That's cute.
They love it.
I think it's cool.
Exactly. We do order these from a special company that actually cleans them, sanitizes them, and everything for us. So it is great, and a lot of schools do have us out for this activity. It's a great little program, but we're also teaching them, about certain birds that are protected and the benefits of having them around. Eating 6 mice per night. So we pull in some math and things with the kids as as well, along with being a scientist.
What's their most popular question? What's in that, I'm sure?
Yeah, their most popular question, yes, is like, sometimes when they do dissect these, they find two skulls. And so it's not just one animal. And so, you know, they found birds and the little voles before, and they're like, man, he's a pig. There's two in here. And so what else does he eat? How many does he eat? And that sort of thing. How do I attract owls to where I live? And that sort of thing. So really, they just get so curious. Yeah. But their most popular question is they do start to dissect. They find specific bones, and they really want to know what this bone is, like every single little bone. And they do have a little chart, and they have to investigate a little, but every little backbone and their little ribs, and what bone is this? What's this one? This was, and they reassemble the bone or the animal as much as possible. So
that's
they just
great
get
to be
so
inquisitive.
Absolutely.
Well, Jennifer Tariq, Education Director at Douglas-Hart Nature Center, thanks for coming on the Paw Report today to talk all things owls. And if you happen to have a question about an owl, maybe a concern, call the Douglas-Hart Nature Center, and I'm sure they can help you out. Jennifer or any one of the other education extension advisors would be happy to answer any questions. Well, that's it for this episode of the Paw Report. We're glad you've joined us. We'll see you next time.
Dave's Decorating Center is a proud supporter of the Paw Report on WEIU. Dave's Decorating Center features the Mohawk Smart Strand Silk Forever Clean Carpet. Dave's Decorating Center, authorized Mohawk Color Center in Charleston.
The Paw Report on WEIU is supported by Rural King, America's farm and home store, livestock feed, farm equipment, pet supplies, and more. You can find your store and more information regarding Rural King at ruralking.com. Additional support for the Paw Report on WEIU is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you.